weekly book club. Right now, we're finishing up the Celestine Prophecy. Halfway into the last chapter, Emerging Culture. You got anything you'd like to start with?
No, just that this book, no matter how many times I read it, fucking changes my life. Is exactly what I need at the exact right time.
As the book spells out.
Mm-hmm. And it's so wild to recognize that this book was written so many years ago before technology was where it is today, and it spells out where we are right now and where we have been since this book was written. And it's just proof that there's this deeper wisdom that we all have access to. And when we allow ourselves to be nothing and let go of the knowing, let go of the shoulds and who we think we have to be, we can access that. It's all here, everything. That's it.
At our disposal.
And so we're right here, right? Where it says that.
Again, I would have stopped at
Yeah, at the end of it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're just
That's right.
Dive right in. That's right, Dobson said. The most important thing is that we see the truth of this way of life. We're here on this planet not to build personal empires of control, but to evolve. Paying others for their insights will begin the transformation, and then as more and more parts of the economy are automated, currency will disappear altogether. We won't need it. If we are correctly following our intuitive guidance, then we will take only what we need.
I wonder if he's still alive.
I think so.
James Redfield.
I think so.
You can see his words come to fruition.
Mm-hmm. And we'll understand, Phil interjected, that the natural areas of the earth have to be nurtured and protected for the sources of incredible power that they are. As Phil spoke, our full attention went to him. He seemed surprised by the lift it provided. I haven't studied all the insights, he said, looking at me. In fact, after the guard helped me escape, I might not have kept this part of the night at all if I hadn't run into you earlier. I remembered that what you said about this manuscript being important, but even though I haven't read the other insights, I do understand the importance of keeping the automation in harmony with the energy dynamics of the earth. My interest has been forests and the part they play in the ecosphere, he continued. I know now that it always has been, ever since I was a child. The ninth insight says that as the human race evolves spiritually, we will voluntarily decrease the population to a point sustainable by the earth. We will be committed to living with the natural energy systems of the planet. Farming will be automated except for the plants one wants to energize personally and then consume. The trees necessary for construction will be grown in special designated areas. This will free the remainder of the earth's trees to grow and age and finally mature into powerful forests. Eventually, these forests will be the rule rather than the exception, and all human beings will live in close proximity to this kind of power. Think what an energy-filled world we will live in. That ought to raise everyone's energy level, he said. Yes, it would, Sanchez said distractedly, as though he were thinking ahead about what the increase in energy would mean. Everyone waited. It would accelerate, he said finally. The pace of our evolution, the more readily we have energy flowing into us, the more mysteriously the universe responds by bringing people into our lives to answer our questions. He looked thoughtful again. And every time we follow an intuition and some mysterious encounter leads us forward, our personal vibration increases. Onward and upward, he continued half to himself. If history continues, then we'll continue to achieve higher and higher levels of energy and vibration, Dobson said, finishing this sentence. Yes, Sanchez said, that's it. Excuse me for a minute. He got up and walked several yards into the forest and sat down alone. What else does the ninth insight say? I asked Dobson. We don't know, he said. That's where the part we have ends. Would you like to see it? I told him I would, so he walked to his truck and came back with a manila folder. Inside were 20 typed pages. I read the manuscript, impressed with how thoroughly Dobson and Phil had captured its basic points. When I came to the last page, I understood why they said it was only a part of the ninth insight. It ended abruptly, in the middle of a concept. Having just introduced the idea that the transformation of the planet would create a totally spiritual culture and would raise human beings to a higher and higher vibrations, it suggested that this rise would lead to the occurrence of something else, but it didn't say what. After an hour, Sanchez stood up and walked over to me. I had been content to sit with the plants, observing their incredible energy fields. Dobson and Phil were standing behind their Jeep talking. I think we should go on to Iquitos, he said. What about those soldiers? I asked. I think we should risk it. I've had a clear thought that we can make it through if we leave right now. I agreed to go with his intuition, and we walked over and told Dobson and Phil our plans. Both men supported the idea. Then Dobson said, we've also been discussing what to do. We're going directly to the Celestine ruins, I think. Maybe we can help save the rest of the ninth insight. We bade them goodbye and drove north again. What are you thinking about? I asked after a period of silence. Father Sanchez slowed the truck and looked at me. I'm thinking about Cardinal Sebastian, about what you have said, that he would stop fighting the manuscript if only he could be made to understand. As Father Sanchez made this statement, my mind wandered into a daydream of actually confronting Sebastian. He was standing in a courtly room looking down at us. At that moment, he had the power to destroy the ninth insight, and we were fighting to make him understand before it was too late. When I finished the thought, I noticed Sanchez was smiling at me. What were you saying? He asked. I was just thinking of Sebastian. What was happening? The image of confronting Sebastian was clearer. He was about to destroy the last insight. We were trying to talk him out of it. Sanchez took a deep breath. It looks like whether the rest of the ninth insight becomes known will depend on us. My stomach drew into a knot at the idea. What should we say to him? I don't know, but we must persuade him to see the positive, to understand that the manuscript as a whole doesn't negate but clarifies the truth of the church. I'm sure the rest of the ninth insight does just that. We rode in silence for an hour, seeing no other traffic of any kind. My thoughts raced through the events which had transpired since I had come to Peru. I knew the manuscript's insights had finally merged in my mind into one consciousness. I was alert to the mysterious way my life evolved, as revealed by the first insight. I knew that the whole culture was sensing this. Goodness, I guess it's your turn.
Mystery as well. And we were in the process of constructing a new worldview, as pointed out by the second. The third and fourth had showed me that the universe, in reality, a vast system of energy, and the human conflict was a shortage of and a manipulation for this energy. The fifth insight revealed that we could end this conflict by receiving an empowering of the energy from a higher source. For me, this ability had almost become habit. The sixth insight, that we could clear our old repeated dramas and find our true selves, was also permanently etched in my mind. And then the seventh had set in motion the evolution of these true selves through question, intuition of what to do and answer. So staying in this magic flow was truly the secret of happiness. And the eighth, knowing how to relate in a new way to others, bringing them out in the very best way, or in the very best, was the key to keeping the mystery operating and the answers coming. All the insights had integrated into consciousness that felt like a heightened sense of alertness and expectation. What was left, I knew, was the ninth, which revealed where our evolution was taking us. We had discovered some of it. What about the rest? Father Sanchez pulled the truck to the side of the road. We were within miles or 4 miles of Cardinal Sebastian's mission, he said. I think we should talk. Okay. I don't know what to expect, but I presume all we can do is drive right in. How large is this place? Large. He has developed this mission for 20 years. He selected this location to serve the rural Indians whom he felt had been neglected. But now students come from all over Peru. He has administrative duties with the church organization in Lima, but this is his special project. He is totally devoted to this mission. He looked directly into my eyes. Please stay alert. There may come a time when we need to help each other. After saying this, Sanchez drove ahead for several miles, and we saw nothing. Then we passed 2 military jeeps parked at the right side of the road. The soldiers inside looked at us intensely as we drove by. Well, Father Sanchez said, they know we're here. A mile further, we came to an entrance to the mission. Large iron gates protected the paved drive. Although the gates were open, a jeep and 4 soldiers blocked our way and signaled us to stop. One of the military men talked into a short-wave radio. Sanchez smiled at the soldier as the soldier walked up. I'm Father Sanchez. I'm here to see Cardinal Sebastian. The soldier scrutinized Sanchez, then me. He turned and walked back to the soldier with the radio. They talked without taking their eyes off of us. After several minutes, the soldier came back and said we should follow them. The jeep led us up to the tree-lined drive for several hundred yards until we came to the mission grounds. The church was built of cut stone and was massive, capable of seating, I guess, over 1,000 people. On both sides of the church were 2 other buildings which looked like classrooms. Both were 4 stories high. This place is impressive, I said. Yes, but where are the people? He asked. I noticed the paths and walkways were empty. Sebastian runs a famous school here, he said. We are there. Why are there no students? The soldiers led us to the entrance of the church and then asked us politely but firmly to get out and follow them inside. As we walked up the cement steps, I could see several trucks parked behind an adjacent building. 30 or 40 soldiers stood at attention nearby. Once inside, we were led through the sanctuary and asked to enter a small room. There we were searched thoroughly and told to wait. The soldiers left and the door was locked. Where is Sebastian's office? I asked. Further back toward the rear of the church, he said. The door suddenly opened. Flanked by several soldiers stood Sebastian. His posture was tall and erect. What are you doing here? Sebastian asked Sanchez. I want to talk with you, Sanchez said. About what? The 9th insight of the manuscript. There's nothing to discuss. It will never be found. We know you've already found it. Sebastian's eyes widened. I will not allow this insight to be dismantled, he said. It's not the truth. It is not the truth. How do you know it's not the truth? Sanchez asked. You could be wrong. Let me read it. Sebastian's face softened as he looked at Sanchez. You used to think I would make the correct decision in a matter of this kind. I know, Sanchez said. You were my mentor, my inspiration. I patterned my mission after yours. You respected me until the manuscript was discovered, Sebastian said. Don't you see how divisive it is? I tried to let you go your own way. I even let you alone after I knew that you were teaching the insights. But I will not let this document destroy everything our church has built. Another soldier walked up behind Sebastian and asked to see him. Sebastian glanced at Sanchez, then walked back into the hall. We could still see, but could no longer hear the conversation. The message obviously alarmed Sebastian. As he turned to walk away, he signaled for all the soldiers to follow him except for one, whom he apparently told to wait with us. The soldiers walked into the room and leaned against the wall, a disturbed look on his face. He was only about 20 years old. What is wrong? Sanchez asked him. The soldier only shook his head. Is it about the manuscript, the ninth insight? The soldier's face displayed surprise. What do you know of the ninth insight? He asked timidly. We're here to save it, Sanchez said. I too want it saved, the soldier replied. Have you read it? I asked. No, he said, but I've heard talk. It brings our religion alive. Ooh. Ooh. Suddenly, from outside the church came the sound of gunfire. What's going on? Sanchez asked. The soldiers stood motionless. Sanchez gently touched his arm. Help us. The young soldier walked to the door and checked the hall and said, Someone has broken into the church and stolen a copy of the Ninth Insight. They seem to still be here on the ground somewhere. More gunfire broke out. We must try to help them, Sanchez told the young man. He looked horrified. We must do what's right, Sanchez stressed. This is for the whole world. The soldier nodded and said we should move to another area of the church where there would be less activity, that perhaps we could find a way to help. He led us down the hall and up 2 flights of stairs into a large corridor which spanned the full width of the church. Sebastian's office is right below us, 2 stories down, the young man said. Suddenly, we could hear a group of people running down the adjacent corridor, heading our way. Sanchez and the soldier were ahead of me, and I ducked into a room to the right. I knew I couldn't reach that room, so I ran into the one next to it and closed the door. I was in a classroom, desks, podium, closet. I ran into the closet, found it unlocked, and squeezed in amid of boxes and several musty smelling jackets. I attempted to conceal myself as best as I could, but I know if anyone checked the closet, I would be discovered. I tried not to move, not even to breathe. The door to the classroom squeaked open, and I could hear several people enter and walked about the room. One seemed to be coming toward the closet, and he stopped and headed the other direction. They were talking loudly in Spanish. Then silence, no movement. I waited 10 minutes before I slowly cracked the closet door and looked out. The room was empty. I walked to the door. There was no indication of anyone outside. I quickly walked to the room where Sanchez and the soldier had hidden. To my surprise, I found it was not a room at all, but a hallway. I listened but could not hear anything. I leaned against the wall, feeling anxiety in the pit of my stomach. I quietly called out Sanchez's name. No response. I was alone. I could feel a slight dizziness from the anxiety. I know there's nothing to speak on, but just in repeating that. But I've heard the talk and it brings our religion alive. Like that gave me goosebumps. I was just reading something, I think it was on Instagram, but it was just about Buddhism and how even Buddhism is not meant to be a religion. It'll make you an amazing Christian. You know what I mean? It'll make you an amazing whatever.
Yeah,
It's just these
so they
beliefs.
Simplify, it's
Yeah.
all meant to work together.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
That's a Brad
I
State.
can't remember who it was that I think it was Richard Rudd actually. And I think he speaks to this in one of the Gene Keys, maybe the 22nd in the book. And he speaks of how the Trinity is like, what if the full expansiveness of spirituality, religion, whatever you want to call it, isn't in one specific religion, but it's the coming together of all three.
Yeah.
And he was speaking, he said it was the Buddha, Christ, and then I think it was Trismegistus.
I don't even know that name.
It's I believe ancient Greek,
Oh,
and
okay.
it has to do with mathematics,
The
honestly.
Vikings got to be in there somewhere. I'm just
Well,
saying.
I know, but that it's not that there's one that's right, but it's when all three come together. They're all meant to support each other, and he describes it so beautifully. And I believe it is in the 22nd, because that's the gene key of grace. And he goes into a lot more detail. I'm not doing it justice at all, but he just describes it in such a way that it's like, well, of course,
Right.
right?
That
That's
makes
the
sense.
whole, I mean, we're at the round
It's
table,
one of the
coming,
insights, right?
round table coming together, council, just like all of it. It doesn't matter whether it's the sacred wild ways of being, or if it's one of the Ten Commandments,
yeah.
or if it's one of the what 8 limbs of yoga, or if it's one
The
of the,
Eightfold Path, yeah.
you know, um
They're all parts of it.
it is,
Yeah.
and they're all meant to be intertwined and to support each other. And it's like, if we bring them all together,
God,
yeah,
fuck.
like
And that's
then-
what I've done with my life, though.
exactly,
You know what I mean?
same.
Spent my life in different religions, and finally I hit this place where they're all fucking right. Like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. Christ did great. Buddha was awesome. Lao Tzu.
Mhm.
I mean,
It's
I love it.
everybody's speaking the same thing.
Yeah, they're all just individual insights to the whole piece.
Yeah. And that's it. Where were we?
Did their culture endure?
Okay. Did their culture endure? He continued. No. No one knows what happened to the Mayans. They just disappeared without a trace. And you want us to believe this manuscript? This document makes it sound as though humans are in control, as though we are in charge of change in the world. We are not. God is. The only issue humans face is whether to accept the scriptural teachings and thereby win our own salvation. But think about that, Sanchez replied. What does accepting the teachings and winning salvation really mean? What is the process through which this happens? Doesn't the manuscript show us the exact process of becoming more spiritual, connected, saved, the way it actually feels? And doesn't the 8th and 9th show us what would happen if everyone were acting this way? Sebastian shook his head and walked away, then turned and looked at Sanchez piercingly. You haven't even seen the 9th insight. Yes, I have. Part of it. How? Part of it was described to me before we arrived here. I read another section a few minutes ago. What? How? I just got goosebumps. Sanchez walked closer to the older priest. Cardinal Sebastian, people everywhere want this last insight revealed. It places the other insights into perspective. It shows us our destiny, what spiritual consciousness really is. We know what spirituality is, Father Sanchez. Do we? I think not. We've spent centuries talking about it, visualizing it, professing our beliefs in it, but we've always characterized this connection as something abstract, something we believe in intellectually. Boom. And we've always cast this connection as something an individual must do to avoid something bad happening. Boom. Rather than to acquire something good and tremendous. The manuscript describes the inspiration that comes when we are truly loving others and evolving our lives forward. Right there.
Yeah.
What happens? We were just talking about this morning, right? What happens if we stop choosing our actions, deciding what we're going to do, making our choices based off of doing better, making the right RIGHT choice, not doing it wrong, avoiding death, avoiding punishment, avoiding pain, avoiding sorrow, and instead begin choosing for what feels good, what's aligned, what's easy, what makes us feel, what activates our life force energy. What if we were to filter out all of the fucking beliefs that tell us we're wrong and bad?
Right.
What happens if we no longer tell the story of how we should be punished? And that's what happens when we're avoiding pain and punishment. That's we're avoiding punishment because we believe we should be punished.
Right.
So instead of avoiding punishment or trying to do the right thing so we don't get punished, what if we just got rid of the word fucking punishment altogether? What if we got rid of wrong and good? Because on the same spectrum, if we talk about getting rid of and doing away with and letting go bad and wrong and worse, we also, on the other end, get rid of, let go,
Right.
good,
Right.
better, best. Like,
Everything just is.
it just fucking is. And it's no longer a competition. It's no longer a struggle for survival. It's no longer let me sacrifice so I can be okay.
Right.
We get to fucking live. And instead of clouding our
That is the
judgment
freedom.
and our perception and our vision with what do we need to do? What is the next thing? What do I need to do to be okay?
Take care of the special places on earth.
We can take a breath. There is no doing the right thing.
Right.
There
Just
is no
take care.
anything. There's simply being. And then when we give ourselves that absolute freedom to simply be, what do we want to do? I want to fucking compost.
Right.
I want to fucking juice.
Yeah. Grow veggies.
When I'm in my lowest fucking space that I've been in a long fucking time, what do? I fast and I go out into nature.
Yeah. That's what the Bible
That's what I fucking do.
Yeah. And it's always the answer.
And if we allowed ourselves to do that regularly instead of, we did that proactively instead of reactively, and then got rid of proactive and reactive and simply just
be.
did, yeah, that we just allowed ourselves to be in our regular, like, natural state of being, wild, right? And had reverence and respect for that instead of shame and guilt, what would this world be like?
Right.
Like
this.
that's it.
It's coming.
It's here. That's the piece,
Yeah,
right? And it's fucking here.
Yeah.
There's nothing for us to do other than allow. That's it.
Mhm. Everything
And-
else is the struggle.
And
Mhm.
the struggle, that too is allowing, like, none of that makes sense anymore. Like the struggle, the friction, the
Right.
resistance, the pushing, the forcing, any of that, none of that fits in this space anymore.
Right.
Everything is
Just
allowing.
is.
The struggle, what we name struggle,
Is
is
part of it.
allowing.
Yeah, like our
What we
conversation
name
about genocide.
forcing is allowing.
Mhm.
And then that weaves into the gene key that we're in right now, gene key 55, the only gene key whose gift and city are the exact same.
Oh, wow.
The shadow is victimization,
Ooh.
and the gift and the city are both freedom. And that
Yes.
victimization, right? That's the, I depend on somebody else
Right.
to provide for me. And the freedom is, I'm already provided for.
Already provided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no choice.
So the Bible says that the birds don't have to worry about where their next meal is. They just land on it. Why are we so?
The trees don't have to worry about getting the
Right.
water or worry about what they're supposed to do or do anything they can to avoid death.
Oh, they
Like,
just
it's all part of the
try to get
natural
to the top of the
process.
forest. Yep.
And so can we allow ourselves to also understand that the struggle is part of the natural process,
Yeah.
that we are allowing, that it is us and our divine being, our divine essence, that is what is happening?
Hmm.
Like that,
Yes.
right there.
Yes. Preach it.
All right, I feel
Let me evolve.
evolve. Okay, there we go. Evolve. Listen to yourself, Father. You have always fought against the influence of evolution. What has happened to you? Sanchez collected himself. Yes, I fought against the idea of evolution as a replacement for God, as a way to explain the universe without reference to God. But now I see that the truth is a synthesis of the scientific and religious worldviews.
Yes.
That's the Trismegistic
Yeah.
part.
Yes.
The truth is that evolution is the way God created. It is and is still creating. Goosebumps, goosebumps.
Fuck, man. Good, there's more.
But there is no evolution, Sebastian protested. God created this world, and that's it. Sanchez glanced at me, but I had no ideas to express. Cardinal Sebastian, he continued. The manuscript describes the progress of succeeding generations as an evolution of understanding, an evolution toward a higher spirituality and vibration. Each generation incorporates more energy and accumulates more truth, and then passes that status on to the people of the next generation, who extend it further.
Fucking kids. it's always the kids, they're
Right.
giving it the more.
Including us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the ones before.
Mhm.
That's been such this beautiful space to be able to see that, because the generation before me, my mom's generation,
Boomers.
they don't see that they did anything,
Right.
or
Their energy
they
was
do
huge.
see that they did something but feel like it's not seen, or it's not, it's just this hostility almost, and then also just this consistent view of the world, where of not the world, I mean, yes, but really their life, that's just, they feel like they settled
Mhm.
and that they didn't finish what they were meant to finish. And the thing is
None
that
of
they were
us.
never meant to.
Right. None of
Like
us.
it's a never-ending
It's
story.
evolution.
It is evolution. The story continues. It's unending, and it picks up where
Never
others left off.
Mhm.
Like taking a look at me and my sister and where we are and what the lives that we're living compared to like the life my mom lived as a
Right.
parent.
Right.
And then already being able to see a part of the future that my children are going to get to live,
Mhm.
and how different that's going to be from mine, the expansion, the evolution, the freedom, the minimal existence of the pain and the fear and the unworthiness and everything like that I lived in my life for a solid 35 years, and that my mom's still living, and it's slowly filtering itself out generation by generation. It's freaking beautiful to witness.
Cardinal Sebastian, I believe.
Oh, no, but I had no idea. Oh, here we go. That's nonsense, Sebastian said. There's only one way to become more spiritual, and that's by following the examples in the scriptures. Exactly, Sanchez said. But again, what are the examples? Isn't the story of the scriptures a story of people learning to receive God's energy? Oh, right, and will within? Isn't that what the early prophets led the people to do in the Old Testament? And isn't that receptivity to God's energy within what culminated in the life of a carpenter's son, to the extent that we say God himself descended to earth? Ooh.
Yeah.
Truth comes there.
Goes back to your vision.
Let's talk about reframing the fucking
Right.
stories. Oh, I'm so excited to read
I think I'd even be interested to follow you in that.
that. Yeah, for sure. Bible study.
I'm down.
Yeah. Isn't the story of the New Testament, he continued, the story of a group of people being filled with some kind of energy that transformed them? Didn't Jesus himself say that what he did, we could do also, and more? We've never really taken that idea seriously, not until now. We're only now grasping what Jesus was talking about, where he was leading us. The manuscript clarifies what he meant, how to do it. So many truths. Sebastian looked away, his face red with anger. During the pause in the conversation, a high-ranking officer burst into the room and told Sebastian that the intruders had been seen. Look, the officer said, pointing out the window. There they are. 300 or 400 yards away, we could see two figures running through an open field headed toward the forest. A number of soldiers at the edge of the clearing seemed ready to open fire. The officer turned from the window and looked at Sebastian, his radio raised. If they get to the wooded area, he said, they will be hard to find. Do I have your permission to open fire? As I watched the two running, I suddenly recognized who they were. That's Will and Julia, I shouted. Sanchez walked even closer to Sebastian. In the name of God, you cannot commit murder over this. The officer persisted. Cardinal Sebastian, if you want this manuscript contained, I must give the order now. I was frozen. Father, trust me, Sanchez was saying. The manuscript will not erode all you have built, all you have stood for. You cannot kill these people. Sebastian shook his head. Trust you? Then he sat down on his desk and looked at the officer. We will shoot no one. Tell your troops to capture them alive. The officer nodded and walked out of the room. Sanchez said, Thank you. You made the right choice. Not to kill, yes, Sebastian said, but I will not change my mind.
This manuscript is a curse. It would undermine our basic structure of spiritual authority. It would entice people to think they are in control of their spiritual destiny. It would undermine the discipline needed to bring everyone in the planet into the church, and people would be caught wanting when the rapture comes. He looked hard at Sanchez. At this moment, thousands of troops are arriving. It doesn't matter what you or anyone else does. The Ninth Insight will never leave Peru. Now get out of my mission. And I will pass.
As we sped away, we could hear dozens of trucks approaching in the distance. Why did he let us go? I asked. I suppose because he thinks it makes no difference, Sanchez replied. But there's nothing we can do. I really don't know what to think. His eyes met mine. We didn't convince him, you know. I too was confused. What did it mean? Perhaps we hadn't been there to convince Sebastian after all. Perhaps we were just supposed to delay him. I glanced back at Sanchez. He was concentrating on driving and searching the roadside for any signs of Will and Julia. We had decided that we would double back in the direction that we had been running. But so far, we had seen nothing. As we rode, my mind wandered to the Celestine ruins. I imagined what the site looked like. The sacred excavations, the scientists' tents, the looming pyramidal structures in the background. They don't seem to be in the woods, Sanchez said. They must have had a vehicle. We must decide what to do. I think we should go to the ruins, I said. He looked at me. We might as well. There's nowhere else to go. Sanchez made a turn to the west. What do you know of these ruins? I asked. They were built by two different cultures, as Julia said. The first, the Mayans, had a thriving civilization there, though most of their temples were further north in the Yucatan. Mysteriously, all of the signs of their civilization suddenly vanished about 600 BC, without apparent cause. The Incas developed another civilization afterward at the same location. What do you think happened to the Mayans? Sanchez glanced at me. I don't know. We rode for several minutes in silence. I suddenly remembered that Father Sanchez had told Sebastian that he had read more of the Ninth Insight. How did you see more of the Ninth Insight? I asked. The younger soldier who helped us knew where another part was being hidden. After you and I were separated, he took me to another room and showed it to me. It added only a few more concepts to what Phil and Dobson told us, but it gave me the points I used with Sebastian. What did it say specifically? That the manuscript would clarify many religions, and it would help them fulfill their promise. All religion, it says, is about humankind finding a relationship to one higher source. And all religions speak of a perception of God within a perception that it fills. Makes us more than we are. All religions speak of a perception of God within, a perception that fills us, makes us more than we are. Okay. Religions become corrupted when leaders are assigned to explain God's will to the people instead of showing them how to find the direction within themselves. The manuscript says that sometime in history, one individual would grasp the exact way of connecting with God's source of energy and direction and would thus become a lasting example that this connection is possible. Sanchez looked at me. Isn't that what Jesus really did? Didn't we increase his energy and vibration until he was light enough to... Sanchez ended his sentence without finishing it and seemed to be deep in thought. What are you thinking? I asked. Sanchez looked perplexed. I don't know. The soldier's copy ended right there. It said that this individual would blaze a path that the whole human race was designed to follow, but it didn't say where this path led. For 15 minutes, we rode in silence. I attempted to receive some indication of what happened next, but I could think of nothing. I seemed to be trying too hard. Oof, that's actually a bold statement too. There are the ruins, Sanchez said, ahead, through the forest to the left of the road. I could make out 3 large pyramidal shaped structures. After we parked and walked closer, I could tell the pyramids were constructed of cut stone and were spaced an equal distance apart, about 100 feet. Between them was an area paved with a smoother stone. Several excavation sites were dug into the base of the pyramids. Look, there, Sanchez said, pointing toward the more distant pyramid. A long figure was sitting in front of the structure. As we walked that way, I noticed an increase in my energy level. By the time we reached the center of the paved area, I felt incredibly energized. I looked at Sanchez, and he raised his eyebrow. When we got closer, I recognized the person by the pyramid to be Julia. She sat cross-legged and held several papers in her lap. Julia? Sanchez called. Julia turned and stood up. Her face seemed iridescent. Where's Will? I asked. Julia pointed to her right. There, perhaps 100 yards away, was Will. He seemed to be glowing in the fading twilight. What is he doing? I asked. The ninth, Julia replied, holding papers towards us. Sanchez told Julia that we had seen some of the insight, the part which foretold of a human world transformed by conscious evolution. But where does this evolution take us? Sanchez asked. Julia didn't answer. She just held up the papers in her hand, as though she expected us to read her mind. What? I asked. Sanchez reached over and touched my forearm. His look reminded me to stay alert and to wait. The ninth reveals our ultimate destiny, Julia said. It makes it all crystal clear. It reiterates that as humans, we are the culmination of the whole of evolution. It talks about matter being in a weak form and increasing in complexity, element by element, then species by species, always evolving into a higher state of vibration. When primitive humans came along, we continued this evolution unconsciously by conquering others and gaining energy and moving forward a little bit, and then being conquered ourselves by someone else and losing our energy. This physical conflict continued until we invented democracy, a system that didn't end the conflict, but shifted it from a physical to a mental level. Now, Julia went on, we're bringing this whole process into consciousness. We can see that all human history has prepared us to achieve conscious evolution. Mm-hmm. Now we can increase our energy and experience the coincidence consciously. This carries evolution onward and at a faster pace, lifting our vibration even higher.
So I want to take a pause and where it says, when primitive humans came along, we continued this evolution unconsciously by conquering others and gaining energy and moving forward a little bit, and then being conquered ourselves by someone else and losing our energy. This physical conflict continued until we invented democracy, a system that didn't end the conflict, but shifted it from a physical to a mental level. What if this conflict, what if these wars, what if this fighting, this right and wrong, this all of the stuff that we're coming out of now was there, the purpose it was there was to strengthen us.
Right.
That was our strength training. That was our conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
That was the way that we could evolve into resilient beings, because without the conflict, without the struggle, there's no opportunity to become resilient. And now, as we continue to evolve out of this, it is now ingrained in our DNA. It is now ingrained in our souls and our blood and our bones and everything. And it no longer has to be wired in the physical or the mental, because that's now just embedded in our species.
Right. In our consciousness.
Right. And so then, like you said, it goes into the spiritual. How do we bring the mind and the body, the mental and the physical, into one whole. Take the conditioning and the strength training that we've had in both and put it together.
Right.
And that's where that, coming together of the scientific and the spiritual, or the emotional and the mental, or logical, emotional and the logical, bringing all of that together and weaving it into one. And then as that begins to evolve,
It is the Trinity.
right, as that begins to evolve, then we begin doing that as a whole,
As a collective, yeah.
right? And the Trinity going again, like when we're in connection, there's you, there's me, and then there's the being that is created by the connection of us.
Right.
There's always three people in a couple. There's three beings in a couple. Like the
Right.
relationship, the connection, that experience is its
all
own
mixed,
being.
yeah. God, I feel that. There's only 4 more pages. Do you want to kill it? Or do you want to
Sure.
stop?
Yeah,
There's one other chapter, but
just afterward.
yeah. But we can start there next week.
Yeah. I don't even think I have the influence.
41? Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
The afterword is not numbered. 47.
No, I don't have it.
Oh,
Where was I? Where was
she
I?
hesitated, I believe.
She hesitated for a moment, looking at each of us, then repeated what she had said. Our destiny is to continue to increase our energy level. And as our energy level increases, the level of vibration in the atoms of our bodies increases. She hesitated again. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Julia said, that we are getting lighter, more purely spiritual. I looked at Sanchez. He was focused intensely on Julia. The ninth insight, Julia continued, says that as we humans continue to increase our vibration, an amazing thing will begin to happen. Whole groups of people, once they reach a certain level, will suddenly become invisible to those who are still vibrating at a lower level.
I remember this in the movie.
It will appear to people on this lower level that the others just disappeared, but the group themselves will feel as though they are still right here, only they will feel lighter. As Julia walked, I noticed her face and body changing somewhat. Her body was taking on the characteristics of her energy field. Her features were still clear and distinct, but it was no longer muscles and skin at which I was looking. She looked as though she were made of pure light, glowing from within. This is what I call the shaman realm
Yeah.
in medicine, because that's what everything, like I can see
Yes.
the energetics of everything. It's not solid anymore, but I see the energy.
Yep. I know that space for sure.
I looked at Sanchez. He appeared the same way. To my amazement, everything appeared this way. The pyramids, the stone under our feet, the surrounding forests, my hands, the beauty I was able to perceive had increased beyond anything I had experienced before, even when on the ridgetop. When humans begin to raise their vibrations to a level where others cannot see them, Julia continued, it will signal that we are crossing the barrier between this life and the other world from which we came and to which we go after death. This conscious crossing over is the path shown by the Christ. He opened up to the energy until he was so light he could walk on water. He transcended death right here on earth and was the first to cross over, to expand the physical world into the spiritual. His life demonstrated how to do this, and if we connect with the same source, we can head the same way, step by step. At some point, everyone will vibrate highly enough so that we can walk into heaven in our same form. I noticed Will was walking slowly toward us. His movement seemed unusually graceful, as though he was gliding. The insight says, Julia went on, that most individuals will reach this level of vibration during the 3rd millennium, and in groups consisting of the people with whom they are most connected. But some cultures in history have already achieved the vibration. According to the 9th insight, the Mayans crossed over together. Julia abruptly stopped talking. From behind us, we heard muffled voices in Spanish. Dozens of soldiers were entering the ruins, coming right for us. To my surprise, I was unafraid. The soldiers continued to walk in our general direction, but strangely not directly toward us. They can't see us, Sanchez said. We're vibrating too highly. I looked again at the soldiers. He was right. They were walking 20 or 30 feet to our left, completely ignoring us.
Dude, this is fucking crazy. I just had a vision. When I was 16, my parents were fed up. They were fucking done with me. And my uncle was living in Flagstaff, and they were just super Christians, just super in it. They had a commercial building downtown where they have all branched off with like 20
Mhm.
people living in this thing. They dropped me off at my uncle's house. My uncle's like, we're going hiking. We went to Oak Creek, we went to Slide Rock, and we went hiking. There was 6 of us that went hiking. We go out, they baptize me, they're gonna save me, right? I go in the water, I come back up, and I felt really good. I did. I felt like I was free from this. I mean, I was down in the meth and I was a mess,
Yes.
and I just felt free. And we're coming back, and there was a couple hanging out on a rock when we walked past them. When we walked back, they literally were like, "Where'd the other guy go? There was 7 of you. Only 6 now. Where's the other guy?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?" We all fucking freak out and goosebumps, and we're just like, now we're crying and in it, but that's that higher frequency. Like,
Yeah.
they're here.
They are.
We just can't see
They're
them.
here with us.
Yeah,
We can name them ghosts. We can name
Right.
them
right.
whatever, but yeah, they're for sure here. Suddenly we heard loud shouts in Spanish by the pyramid to our left. The soldiers closest to us stopped and ran in that direction. I strained to see what was happening. Another group of soldiers were emerging from the forest, holding the arms of 2 other men, Dobson and Phil. The sight of their capture jolted me, and I could feel my energy level plummet. I looked at Sanchez and Julia. Both were staring intently toward the soldiers and appearing equally disturbed. "Wait," Will seemed to shout from the opposite direction. "Don't lose your energy." I felt the words as well as heard them. They were slightly garbled. We turned to see Will walking quickly toward us. As we watched, he seemed to say something else, but this time the words were completely unintelligible. I realized I was having trouble focusing. His image was becoming hazy, distorted. Gradually, as I stared in disbelief, he disappeared altogether. Julia turned to face Sanchez and me. Her energy level seemed lower, but she was completely undaunted, as though whatever just happened clarified something. "We weren't able to maintain the vibration," she said. "Fear lowers one's vibration tremendously." She looked toward the spot where Will had faded from view. The 9th insight says that while some individuals may cross over sporadically, a general rapture will not occur until we have abolished fear, until we can maintain a sufficient vibration in all situations, which, as foretold by the futurist community, is the generation that is born in 2027 will not have fear in their genetic makeup.
That's fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
Julia's excitement grew. "Don't you see? We can't do it yet, but the role of the 9th insight is to help create that confidence. The 9th insight is the insight of knowing where we are headed. All the other insights create a picture of the world as one of incredible beauty and energy, and of ourselves as increasing our connection with and thus seeing this beauty. The more beauty we can see, the more we evolve. The more we evolve, the higher we vibrate." Fucking knew it. All about the beauty. The 9th insight shows us that ultimately our increased perception and vibration will open us up to a heaven that is already before us. We just can't see it yet. Whenever we doubt our own path or lose sight of the process, we must remember what we are evolving toward, what the process of living is all about. Reaching heaven on earth is why we are here. And now we know how it can be done, how it will be done. She paused momentarily. The 9th mentions that a 10th insight exists. I think it must reveal. Before she could finish, a burst of machine gun fire ripped up the stone tiles by our feet. We all dived to the ground, our hands raised. No one spoke as the soldiers came and confiscated the papers and took each of us in different directions. It's
when I say I knew it's all about the beauty, I said that half-hearted, lightheartedly, but it's true. The beauty exists everywhere, everywhere. And there's something to be said about the energy that we feel when we are just enraptured by the beauty of nature, or staring into a lover's eyes, or oh, it's beautiful,
Yeah.
or when we lose ourselves because we're playing or in music, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, when we're creating, when we're in conversation
In
with
flow.
people, when we're
Just
yes,
in flow.
and
When
that's
we're in flow.
it. Like that's that energy.
Right.
And it's been dismissed for so long, right? Yeah, fairy tales don't exist. Bring yourself back to reality.
Right.
All of these different things in different ways that are telling us that it's, stop acting like a child. No,
Be a child.
that's exactly what we need to do.
Yeah.
Like, look at a child's face or being when they are looking at dirt
Right.
or at a piece of grass or fucking the clouds or at a cricket,
Right.
like they see the beauty in it all. And as parents, like that's that shift in consciousness when it comes to parenting, is that is what is meant to be supported and given time to like make space for them.
Right.
Allow them to just do that.
Be in awe.
This is why
Yeah.
bringing it back to the full attention of the child, like the full attention of one adult to one child,
Right.
is so that the child doesn't have to worry about being safe or providing for themselves.
They can just stay in awe.
Or we're so quick to teach them how to walk, teach them how to crawl, teach them how to eat, teach them how to make their food and do their laundry and do the dishes and do all these things.
Instead of just being.
When if we were to allow them to purely be, if we had the resources to allow each child to purely be, what would that look like? And to learn how to, and to allow them to continue to embody, because they don't need to learn how
They
to
would
embody
never.
that energy,
They would
because they would never forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's that peace.
Yeah.
The first weeks after my capture were spent in constant terror. My energy level fell dramatically as one military officer after another questioned me threateningly about the manuscript. I played the dumb forest and claimed ignorance. After all, it was true that I had no idea who among the other priests had copies, or how widespread public acceptance of the document had become. Gradually, my tactic worked. Over time, the soldiers seemed to grow tired of me and passed me on to a group of civilian authorities who took a different approach. These officials sought to convince me that my trip to Peru had been crazy from the beginning. Crazy because, according to them, the manuscript never really existed. They argued that insights had in fact been invented by a small group of priests with the intent to foster rebellion. I had been duped, these officials told me, and I let them talk. After a while, the conversations became almost cordial. Everyone began to treat me as a guiltless victim of this plot, as a gullible Yankee who had read too many adventure tales and found himself lost in a foreign country. And because my energy was so low, I possibly would have become vulnerable to this brainwashing had something else not occurred. I was suddenly transferred from the military base where I was being held to a governmental compound near the airport in Lima, a compound in which Father Carl was also being detained. The coincidence brought back some of my lost confidence. I was walking in the open courtyard when I first saw him sitting on a bench reading. I strolled over, restraining my exuberance and hoping I wouldn't attract attention from the officials inside the building. When I sat down, he looked up at me and grinned. "I've been expecting you," he said. "You have?" He put down his book. I could see the delight in his eyes. "After Father Costas and I came to Lima," he explained, "we were immediately detained and separated, and I've been here in custody ever since. I couldn't understand why. Nothing seemed to be happening. Then I began to think repeatedly of you." He gave me a knowing look, so I figured you would show up. I'm grateful you're here, I said. Did anyone tell you what happened at the Celestine ruins? Yes, Father Carl replied. I spoke briefly with Father Sanchez. He was held here for a day before being taken away. Is he all right? Did he know what happened to the others? And what about him? Were they going to imprison him? He had no information about the others, and as for Father Sanchez, I don't know. The government strategy is to methodically search out and destroy all copies of the manuscript, then to treat the whole affair as a grand hoax. We'll all be thoroughly discredited, I imagine, but who knows what they will ultimately do with us. What about Dobson's copies, I said. The first and second insights he left in the States. They already have them, Father Carl replied. Father Sanchez told me that agents of the government found out where they were hidden and stole them. Apparently, Peruvian agents have been everywhere. They knew about Dobson from the beginning and about your friend Charlene. And you think when the government is through, no copies will remain? I think it will be a miracle if any survive. I turned away, feeling my newfound energy diminished. You know what that means, don't you? Father Carl said. I looked at him but said nothing. This means, he continued, that each of us must remember exactly what the manuscript said. You and Sanchez didn't convince Cardinal Sebastian to release the manuscript, but you delayed him long enough for the ninth insight to be understood. Now it is to be communicated. You have to be involved in communicating it. His statement made me feel pressured, and my aloof drama activated inside me. I leaned against the back of the bench and looked away, which made Father Carl laugh. Then, at just that moment, we both realized several embassy officials were watching us from an office window. Listen, Father Carl said quickly. From now on, the insights will have to be shared between people. Each person, once they hear the message and realize that the insights are real, must pass on the message to everyone who is ready for it. Connecting with energy is something humans have to be open to and talking about and expecting. Otherwise, the whole human race can go back to pretending that life is about having power over others and exploiting the planet. If we go back to doing this, then we won't survive. Each of us must do what we can to get this message out. I noticed that the two officials were out of the building walking toward us. One more thing, Father Carl said, speaking lowly. What? Father Sanchez told me Julia had spoken of a 10th insight. It hasn't yet been found and no one knows where it might be. The officials were almost on us. I've been thinking, Father Carl continued, that they're going to release you. You may be the only one that can look for it. The men suddenly interrupted our conversation and escorted me toward the building. Father Carl smiled and waved and said something else, but I could only half pay attention. As soon as Father Carl had mentioned a 10th insight, I had been consumed by a thought of Charlene. Why was I thinking of her? How was she connected to a 10th insight? The two men insisted that I pack the few things I had left and follow them to the front of the embassy and into a state vehicle. From there, I was taken directly to the airport and up to a boarding concourse, where one of them smiled faintly and looked at me from behind thick glasses. His smile faded as he handed me a passport and a ticket for a flight to the United States, then told me in a heavy Peruvian accent to never, never return. Reading that last part, I was feeling those emotions come up, because that's what we're all doing here. We're sharing the insights as we remember them.
Right.
And remember that they're real.
Ooh.
That's what the Sacred Wild is doing. That's what
Yes.
Fluorescence is doing. That's what Orgasmic Oracle is doing. That's what Blue's doing. That's what Aubrey Marcus is doing. That's what anybody who's on doing these podcasts and sharing, creating a space for people to share themselves and connect, all of these communities, all of these festivals, all of these gatherings, all of these things. There's different words and there's different steps and there's different energies and there's different, all of it. It's all doing the same thing. We're doing our part to share this word, to create the spaces in which we can practice these principles. So we can practice connecting freely, so we can practice seeing each other and embodying this energy and cultivating this energy together. Whether it's a drum circle or a yoga class or meditation or dance or whatever it is, this is what we're all doing.
This is why. This is the why.
whether we name it or not,
Oof.
whether we know it or not, whether we're aware of it or not. This is what we're doing.
The purpose-driven life. Holy fuck, man. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed it. Are we gonna do the
Figure,
light living insights? Living the insights?
yeah, I figure next week we can read that, and then depending on what the time is,
We got 2
can-
weeks here.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, it goes all the way to the end, so there's 30 pages, 2 or 3 more weeks. Fuck
Well,
it.
yeah, we'll go ahead and finish that. I'll need to share your book because I don't have it anyway. I have an older copy.
Works for me.
And then we'll move forward into the 10th insight after that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you guys.